We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order.
New world order.
New world order.
This is a moment to seize. The kaleidoscope has been shaken. The pieces are in flux. Soon they will settle again. Before they do, let us reorder this world around us.
A new world order.
A world where the United Nations is poised to fulfill the historic vision of its founders.
Nevertheless, the United States is in a key position to shape this so that the problem of the Bush presidency will be the emergence of a new international order.
The first decade of the 21st century, that out of what will be seen as the greatest restructuring of the global economy, a new world order was created.
Documenting the crisis of our republic.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
Waging war on the New World Order.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
This is Govern America with Darren Weeks and Vicky Davis.
Live from FEMA Regions 5 and 10, this is Govern America. I'm Darren Weeks. Vicky Davis is here as well. It is the 14th of November, 2020, as we once again document the crisis of our republic. And here we are again, another week without a clear winner in the presidential election, despite what the media tells you. The propaganda continues, ladies and gentlemen. They're moving forward like Joe Biden won this thing in the clear, and nothing's being challenged. And still yet we have all these lawsuits going on everywhere. And we have clear evidence of fraud, despite what the anti-social media would have you believe, and every single thing that you post in an attempt, and I'm talking about the major players, not the players like Gab and stuff, which, it becomes more and more clear that we're going to have a divided country in terms of anti-social media as well, because people are basically being, for lack of a better way of saying it, they're being herded into areas where they are basically isolated from other opinions. The big major players are censoring everything to the point where it's become nearly impossible to get any kind of information out in a useful fashion. And as these things happen, I don't know about other people, but I know I certainly don't feel comfortable continuing to operate on a platform that is given to such incredible censorship. It's unbelievable. They put, in fact, last week's show, it was posted up on Twitter. They got a notification on there saying that our claim of election fraud or whatever it was, however they got it worded, is disputed. And so I've taken to preemptively putting in the tweets that Twitter can dispute this if they want, but facts are facts and Twitter lies. It's gotten to the point where it's pretty sad when you actually have to put that in your actual message that they claim it's factually disputed, and yet it's factual. And a lot of these people that are working in Silicon Valley, I imagine they're probably teenagers, or not teenagers, but young 20-year-olds, 20-somethings, fresh out of college, and they're making these decisions unilaterally because now in this liberal generation with all these leftists, hey, we got to listen to the children because the children know best. We don't value elderly people anymore because elderly people, the truth of the matter is they know too much. They've been down, they've seen too much, they've witnessed too much in their life. And so they have the University of Hard Knocks to go by, where these children are young skulls full of mush, as one talk show host called them. And all they know is what their Marxist professors on the college university campuses have taught them, which is crap. But I just don't feel very optimistic about the country coming together. You know, and how ironic is it now that we have Joe Biden and all his minions calling for unity after the last 4 years where they've done nothing but try to divide the nation. What a slap in the face, and what hypocrisy. Anyway, good morning, Vicky. As you can tell, I'm not in a terribly great mood right now.
Good morning. Well, that was a great opening, I thought, and you just hit it spot on. They are trying to shut down information sources, and anybody that doesn't go along with the big tech narrative is disputed. I like that. That's their nice way of putting it. The truth of it is disputed.
Yeah, disputed. It's exactly
everybody
how they put
has
it.
their own facts, but only their facts count.
Yeah, talk about Orwellian. It seems very Orwellian to me. And what's odd about this whole situation, as they call for unity, isn't, you know what unity really is? Somebody said unity is really a buzzword for submission. That's what unity is. Because it's funny how they don't call for unity when there's a Republican president. They haven't called for unity once under Donald Trump. It was resist, resist, resist. And now all of a sudden they're calling for unity under a Democratic president who isn't even president yet. That's the thing about it. I mean, this thing is not settled. And as I go down to, I'm not so convinced that, I'm not so convinced that Trump is going to prevail on this.
I have to agree with you. I'm not so sure. It doesn't seem to me like he's trying very hard. It's kind of like he's, how fighters sometimes throw the match. They pretend they're fighting, but they're really not.
Well, I don't know. He's been pretty adamant. I mean, they've been filing a lot of lawsuits in court. I don't know what he can do more than that, other than use his bully pulpit. But he's been using his bully pulpit for close to his entire 4-year term, and that doesn't seem to have gotten him anywhere.
Well, that's true, but it just seems to me like that there's people, on some websites they're talking about it a lot, but I don't hear much from the campaign people. I don't know. Maybe I've just had my head buried in other places. I don't know.
Well,
that's possible.
I don't know. I suspect they're just fighting it out in court and focusing their attention there. I don't really know what the campaign people can do, honestly.
Well, just keep people informed. That's the main thing at this point. It's just keep us informed. Lawsuit here, a lawsuit there. There should actually be a central place where they're posting information on all these lawsuits.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the status of all of that is, and I'm sure there probably is if we went digging for it. But the sad part about it is the left has been using, and the leftist politicians have been using, a lot of lawfare tactics against the president all this time. Throughout his whole administration. And as we'll see, they're guilty of many of the same things they went after other people for. But there's I don't know. Vicky, you remember when the Democrat Party used to be the party, at least in claim only, if not in practice, they used to be very adamant about the First Amendment. It was the First Amendment was sacrosanct.
Oh yeah, all of the liberal values.
Yeah, the classic liberal values was, the First Amendment, free speech, anti-war, and I just don't see those things in the Democratic Party anymore. Those are the things that I like. Those are the things that I value. Privacy. That was another key one, I think, that the Democratic Party was very adamant about. And yet, all of these things now that supposedly in historic years they were in favor of, they're not in favor of anymore. It's trust government. It's go along. It's follow along. It's, and I'm looking at an article right now. The Attorney General here in the state of Michigan is pursuing a journalist, or at least threatened a journalist, to go after them if they didn't take down a video that she called a misleading and false election information video. So we've come to this point now, and her name is Dana Nessel, and we've come to this point now where we have the state attorney general here in Michigan, who is a Democrat. She's a part of the Gretchen Whitmer administration, and she's threatened with criminal prosecution. This journalist from Big League Politics to take down this video. Where is the media on this? You know, if the roles had been reversed and it had been a Republican administration threatening a Democrat journalist or any journalist that would be a mainstream type deal, they would have been all over this thing, and they would have been. We would have satellite trucks parked the whole Capitol, all the streets of the Capitol would have been clogged with satellite uplink trucks for weeks, maybe months, until they backed down on it. Where's the outrage? Where's the outrage?
Well, you know, we had a prosecutor here in Idaho that tried to stifle people's free speech. A lot of what they do in the prosecutor's office is just pure intimidation. Mm-hmm. You know, they threaten to come after you.
That's exactly right. That's what it is.
When the alternate media came right back at her, then she kind of backed off, and actually she was transferred. So it really takes rising up to meet them eye to eye and say, oh yeah.
Yeah, I would love to see her transferred out of office, and I think she will be come next election. But this is just outrageous. Here's the story. The only person that actually raised the issue on the national newscast is Tucker Carlson, as far as I know. He's the only one that actually did something about it.
You may never have heard of Dana Nessel. She's the highly partisan, not especially bright Attorney General of the state of Michigan. Nessel ran for office 2 years ago with an ad, we're not making this up, bragging that she, quote, doesn't have a penis. That's the kind of person she is. She's divisive, she's a buffoon. Unfortunately, Dana Nessel has power now, and she's set about abusing it in the most un-American possible ways. Michigan cities are some of the most violent places in the Western Hemisphere. As the state's chief law enforcement officer, you'd think Dana Nessel might work on that. But no, she spent her time trying to shut down Catholic charities for being pro-life. One of her cases against the church was so transparently unconstitutional that a federal judge accused Nessel of committing, quote, a targeted attack on a sincerely held religious belief. Then, when citizens in Michigan protested their governor's absurdly partisan COVID lockdowns, abortion clinics and her husband were exempt from them, everyone else had to stay at home, Dana Nessel dismissed those complaints as, quote, white folks outraged because they can't go golfing, and so on. Dana Nessel may be the worst attorney general in the country, and there's stiff competition in that category. So it was just a matter of time before Dana Nessel tried to invalidate the First Amendment. Now she is doing that. Nessel is threatening to imprison the editors of the conservative news organization Big League Politics for the crime of reporting the news. That site has posted audio recordings of poll workers in Michigan. Nessel claims their report is, quote, misleading. That's a crime now in Michigan, apparently. And just in case that wasn't clear, Nessel warned Big League Politics that, quote, failure to comply will result in criminal prosecution. So if you disagree with Dana Nessel, you will go to jail. That's the new third world standard in Michigan. What's interesting is that other news organizations have said virtually nothing about this. CNN isn't complaining about it, neither is the Washington Post or the New York Times. They love authoritarianism as long as their team is benefiting from it. We don't like it, no matter who's in charge. Maybe Dana Nessel should fight someone her own size. Instead of terrorizing an independent website, why doesn't Dana Nessel try that with us? Go ahead, Dana Nessel. See how that goes. Good luck.
Anyway, my hat's off to Tucker for mentioning that on his... Yeah. Go ahead.
That was good. I enjoyed that.
Well, these people are absolutely crazy. They're nuts. You know, it's kind of funny. I'm looking at Twitter, and she put out a tweet, Dana Nessel did. Dear members of the public, please stop harassing and threatening calls to my staff. They're kind, hard-working public servants just doing their job. asking them to shove Sharpies in uncomfortable places is never appropriate and is a sad commentary on the state of our nation.
That's funny.
So I don't condone telling people to shove Sharpies in uncomfortable places, but we do see why people are getting frustrated with these characters. And anyway, last week, Vicky, we were talking about how we mentioned the National Election Pool and Voters News Service, and how National Election Pool apparently has evolved or changed from Voters News Service, or was simply renamed from Voters News Service. Anyway, the two are basically they were feeding all of the networks, all the news organizations. All the information was coming from one place. And that was during the 2000 election, and that's why they called the election wrong twice and had to pull it back each time. Well, I have another thing that I've come across. This is from the Gateway Pundit, and what they were talking about, really, the story wasn't even really about that. They said, special thanks to the New York Times for accidentally providing the data that will bring down Biden and crack the biggest vote fraud in history. Now, I don't know. That's an optimistic assessment, whether it'll bring down Biden. But one thing that they said here is that, well, let me just share a little of the article, see what you think of this. They said, on Tuesday we published our report on the widespread election night theft of votes from President Donald Trump to Joe Biden. We obtained an unaudited analysis of data available for all the states looking for system glitches. I hate that word. System glitches and other oddities in vote counts related to the presidential race only. We were led to a site on the internet, thedonald.win, where someone who had seen our post decided to run analysis himself. The author obtained data that had been passed around that was reportedly captured by the New York Times on election night. By examining the data, the author was able to locate an instance where votes were switched from Trump to Biden. So he decided to perform an analysis on the entire data set, starting with the states where Dominion voting systems are used. Now, I want to pause it right there. On a side note, and this is a side note, think about, why would you call an election system Dominion? I mean, wouldn't you have loved to have been in that room, like a bug on the wall, while they were having the discussion? Gee, what are we going to call our company? What are we going to call our election system? Oh, I know, Dominion. Yeah, that's it. That's what we want to call an election system.
Well, I think I know why.
Okay.
If you look at the whole geopolitical strategy that originated with the idea of which originated with the British Empire, the G7 and everything that they've done has been to establish a global system of governance sitting over the top of large land masses like the entire American continent, North and South America, and Asia and Europe. And so what you'll end up with is like a world dominated by 3 or 4 countries.
Yeah.
And, okay, now the British Empire, their colonies, when they went through stages of development, they went from a colony to a dominion, right? Canada is a dominion.
Okay.
And that means they are semi-autonomous from the crown.
But we don't want to portray that. And when you're trying to convince the American people, or whatever people you're selling these things to, the last thing it seems to me like you would want to call your voting system is Dominion. I don't know. I think if I was in the meeting, I think I would want to say, how about integrity or, truthfulness, or I don't know. Yes,
well,
it just seems to me like
what I've noticed.
Yeah.
What I've noticed is that whoever the operatives are in this whole global strategy, takedown of the nation states, they have a really, I think, sadistic sense of humor.
Yeah.
They're like psychopaths, you know.
Totally.
They leave clues. They want you to know, but they can't tell you. And so, you know, they do this kind of thing.
Yeah, and they rub your face in it.
I was thinking about that as I was watching the anniversary of the Marine Corps, the cutting of the cake ceremony. And as I was looking at those Marines wearing masks, it just turned my stomach. And I was thinking that whoever came up with this idea of the masks really has a sadistic sense of humor.
Well, there's
because it's so freaking absurd.
Mm-hmm. It's and we were talking about free speech a second ago. Mandating that people wear masks is really a stifling of their First Amendment rights. Now, I don't think that anybody's going to file that lawsuit in court on First Amendment grounds, but I think an argument could very well be made that it is a stifling of your First Amendment rights because you speak, you know, the spoken word is certainly an expression of your, you know, it's a communicative thing when you talk, but there are many ways to communicate, and facial expressions certainly are a way to communicate, and you can't communicate with a facial expression if your face is covered.
Yeah, we could probably spend 2 hours talking about the symbolism of the mask and what it means.
Yeah, the muzzle. It's muzzling people.
Yeah, yeah.
And there are people that have gone into the occult, and they said that, you know, there's actually, and I haven't delved into this as much as others, but there are people that say that, you know, the occult initiation involves masks. So the question then becomes, are we all being somehow initiated into some kind of mass occult thing? I know I'm getting down in the weeds and this is all conspiracy stuff. You know, I have to play,
not really.
play this music.
Think about it.
Okay, there you go. I had to hit the spooky music.
Well, think about the mask. I mean, years ago when activism was first getting rolling because of the things they were doing for 9/11 and the war and everything else, there was Anonymous. And what's the deal with Anonymous? The mask.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of symbolism. It would really be interesting to have an expert in the occult talk about that, you know, tell us about that.
Yeah, I don't know where you'd find somebody that was well versed in that, but certainly I'm sure there's plenty of information on the internet, and probably from the source, from a source of somebody that does. I'm sure there's probably people that would be qualified to talk about that.
And what about Antifa? Their whole thing is the mask. Right?
Well, that they love wearing the mask because they love to be able to recreate their criminal activities. And by the way, I'm not entirely unconvinced that there's not the correlation between the mask mandates and the Antifa type of activities, Antifa, Black Lives Matter, where they get violent, because it's way too convenient for people to be able to be mandated to wear masks in public. And, you know, in the past, you could just say, well, that person is wearing a mask, therefore he or she must be doing something up to no good, shall we say.
Right.
Now,
well, think about the illogic
they've got impunity.
of it. The logic of it is that I personally wear a mask to protect everybody else. Well, that's just freaking insane. You know, how is my wearing a mask protecting everybody else?
Well, they say when you talk, you spray. But, I mean, this whole thing is so ridiculous. It's gotten everyone to the point where they're being more antisocial. People are afraid of each other. They're afraid of interacting. I mean, it was bad enough the trend we were on before. It's all just way too convenient because the more antisocial people are, the more likely they are to turn each other in for different crimes against the state. That's what I think is going on. The whole thing is designed to make people turn one against another, and they fostered this sense of childishness for so many years. They've created an adult population of children.
Yeah.
It's really sad.
That's true. And that was one of the concerns, when the Twin Falls City Council had the meeting on the mask mandate. There was a concern that our 911 system would be overstretched by
snitches.
Calls about people not wearing masks.
Yeah, I wouldn't be a bit surprised, and I think that was probably a very valid concern. But getting back to this Gateway Pundit thing real quick, the reason why I brought that up is because they say the author also claims that the data, remember this guy was running analyses on his website, they said the data is from Edison Research, and it is the same data that is used for election coverage by at least ABC News, CBS News, CNN, and NBC News. It is also used for the website of the New York Times and probably others as well. So, again, we have another entity supposedly doing exit polling, feeding all the networks and the New York Times, and who knows, probably the Associated Press, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's kind of like criminals getting their stories straight, right?
Yeah.
So they're all telling the same story.
Yeah, it's you got to wonder what's really going on behind the scenes and where these election numbers are coming from. That's the key. All right, let's take the bottom of the hour break. We'll continue on the other side. Stay with us, ladies and gentlemen. This is Govern America.
Where the spooks go to find out what's really going on. This is Govern America.
Welcome back to the broadcast. This is Govern America. The website is governamerica.com. That's the website for the show, governamerica.com. My email address is radio@governamerica.com. Vicky, go ahead and give your information out, please.
Okay, my website is thetechnocratictyranny.com, and my email address is eyeswideopen@channelingreality.com, which is the name of my older website that is still up, still has lots of research on it.
Yeah, valuable, many hours. How many hours would you say you've put into all that?
Oh, my God. Well, if I were charging at the same rate that I charged as a systems analyst programmer, I would say probably about $1.5 million worth.
Wow. Yeah, many hours, probably days, probably weeks, perhaps even months.
Total life dedication
to
figuring out what was going wrong, because what I saw when I started was a nightmare of unbelievable proportions. I can't even describe it to you, but
well, you don't have to describe it.
The vision of the future that I saw was so horrendous. It was like, the end of humanity.
You don't have to describe it, because we're starting to live it right now. That's the amazing thing. This is why so many people have awakened to what's going on now. For many, many years, we've been frustrated because we've been trying to get people's attention, everyday people. Say, look, the country is important. All of these issues that we're talking about are important. And all we got back from people were, including family members, and I guess that's especially painful, is to get from your family member, somebody very, very close to you, somebody you love and care about. But they look at you and say, you know what, you're into all of that. I don't care about all that. That doesn't affect me. I don't spend my life worrying about all that stuff like you do. Like, this is your project, this is your thing, and they basically brush you aside.
You know what? That's exactly what somebody said to me. This is your project.
Yeah, I think everybody...
Nothing to do with me.
Everybody in the truth movement who has spent any time researching this stuff and talking about it and trying to get other people to wake up has heard that very thing. This is your thing. This is your project. You worry about it. And, I just can't... I'm too busy. I'm too busy with my life. I'm too busy trying to make things work. I'm too busy trying to make ends meet. Well, here's the thing. How well are you making ends meet when your state is shutting down all the time? How well are you... Oh, yeah, but that's a different thing. That's a pandemic. No, it's not. This whole thing is engineered by the technocrats, by the global governance people, by the World Economic Forum people. Because this is the great reset, ladies and gentlemen, that we've been warning has been coming for many, many years. And now it's upon you. This is a part of an orchestrated plan.
Right. You know what?
Does it affect you now?
What came to me this morning, and what I was so deep into when you called that I wasn't watching the clock, was that I put together the idea of the UN Treaty on Biodiversity and the biodiversity maps. Okay, the management of the ecosystem, what we thought was just for animals, the management of large swaths of our country under the Biodiversity Treaty. Well, when you put that together with public health, and you have an image of a full spectrum management system for animals and humans. Okay, now since this whole pandemic planning has begun, the whole deal about pandemics is what? It's diseases transferring from animals to people. That's the connection. The zoonotic diseases that affect animals and people. And that is the disease syndrome that they are using for the full spectrum management of the environment and people. And that's the whole deal.
Yeah, and how much money has been spent over the years, over the decades, trying to engineer these designer diseases to make them jump from animals to people, vice versa maybe.
Which they really have to work at doing, because it's not a natural thing, for a disease to jump from an animal to a person. It's not a normal and natural thing.
I was alarmed to find out, and I've mentioned this many times before on the program, that they spent 9 years working to recreate the 1918 Spanish flu virus that they said killed so many people. And, in this day and age, I don't know how many people it really killed. Because there are people... There was a woman I was reading that wrote a lot about that back then because she lived through it. Her name is slipping my... I think it's Eleanor McBean, if I remember correctly. She had, I guess, lived through it. And she wrote about it and basically said that, yeah, it killed some people, but the people that really died from it was when they came out with a vaccine. And...
Yeah, my grandfather was, he joined the Army. He was going to go fight in World War I, and he went to Fort Lewis, and he got it. And so he always said he fought the Battle of Fort Lewis, because that's where he got the flu.
That's clever way of putting it. Anyway, I mentioned that the first half hour of the show, that the Biden camp are actually doing the very same thing that they pursued others for. You remember back in the early part, just before Trump took office, they went after Michael Flynn. Because during the Trump transition period, Michael Flynn was talking to other world leaders. Back then, there was no question who won the election. There was no question. There was no, despite all the hair pulling and, all the things that Hillary Clinton busted after she learned that her glass ceiling wouldn't be busted. because you remember they had the glass ceiling in the, I don't know, it was the convention hall or whatever it was, wherever they were at, where they were waiting for the election results. They literally had a glass ceiling of some kind. I don't know if it was real glass, probably not. It would seem like that would be dangerous, but they had something that resembled glass, probably like a movie set type of glass. You know how cowboys go through windows and they have the fake glass which shatters.
Don't tell me they had her lifted up going through the glass ceiling.
No, I don't think she was going through the glass ceiling. That would actually be kind of
I was
fun to watch.
Say, I'd like to see that.
But no, they were going to shatter the glass and the ceiling, and of course they never had a chance to do that. And word had it that she was throwing things and basically pitching a little temper tantrum, like Democrats are known for. I'm sorry, but what is with these people that they can't act like adults and take things in stride when they lose? Well, wait a minute. Yeah. Maybe it has an origin back when we give people participation trophies and nobody's a loser. You don't learn if you don't learn how to lose. If you don't learn how to handle defeat at an early age, then when you get to be an adult, you don't know how to handle defeat. Well, in her case,
you're not considering the stakes. The election where she lost was supposed to be the election that would be the transformation of the entire global system. I mean, they were all set to finish us off.
Well, that and the fact that she was probably worried that Trump would really make good on his promise to lock her up.
Yes, and to return America to a state of national sovereignty.
Right.
And break this damn global system under the WTO where all of they're using the United States as the host for all these parasitic nations to feed off of. So all these years, my entire working life, and I didn't realize this, but my entire working life, they've used our country to get other countries to buy into this whole global system, and they used our tax dollars to do it.
Yep, that's exactly right. Can't argue with that. So anyway, what I'm getting at here is now, they went after Michael Flynn for talking to world leaders, supposedly, and I forget which law it was. I don't know, maybe you'll remember. They claim you can't, some law that you can't talk to, like a private individual can't negotiate with world leaders because it undermines the president's foreign policy or whatever. I
know which one it is. I'll think of it.
Blanking on the law. But they went after him because he did that. Despite the fact that he was on the Trump transition team, he was a part of that, and they were doing it on behalf of a president-elect that was, the contest wasn't even contested. It was real. It was real that he was genuinely elected, and despite the fact that they later claimed it was the Russians and all this other nonsense. But the point is that they targeted Michael Flynn for that. Now we have Ben Rhodes on MSNBC, Vicky. Listen to what he said here.
That's right, Nicole. And transitions are set up to be the most efficient way possible to hand over this massive apparatus of the U.S. government from one president to another. And that means you have to do several things at once. Part of it is, yes, mapping out personnel changes from cabinet secretaries to the several thousand political appointees that need to be filled to the White House staff itself. But also you have to get ready for your policy agenda from day one. So they have these landing teams that go into the different departments and agencies, literally teams of people who would be normally working out of the State Department or HHS, trying to get a handle on what's the state of play here. What's the latest on the virus that's in the U.S. government that we need to know about as we're making our plans so that we can have as seamless a transition as possible to January 20th. And this is an effort to kind of slow down those gears. But here's the thing. This is going to happen anyway, Nicole. The Trump people seem to be talking like they have some agency here.
Okay, first of all, it's not necessarily going to happen when the election isn't settled. And they're just talking like it's a foregone conclusion. Trump needs to get out of the way and let the transition take place. No, it's not. But listen to what he says next.
We're going to have the pageantry already of the president-elect announcing his advisory board. He's going to start announcing cabinet secretaries. The center of political gravity in this country and the world is shifting to Joe Biden. Foreign leaders are already having phone calls with Joe Biden talking about the agenda they're going to pursue January 20th.
How is it that they're having phone calls?
Isn't that interesting? Foreign leaders, huh? But they're private citizens.
Yeah, the very thing they went after Michael Flynn for, the Biden, quote-unquote, administration, and I do put that word in quotes, they're having phone calls with world leaders. And nobody cares. It's crickets. That's fine for them. The double standard is ridiculous. It's worse than ridiculous. It's sick. These people are really, really sick.
Well, there's nothing off limits when you're talking about war. And there is a war. There's a war between American patriots, American nationals, and these globalist traitors. Mm-hmm. Now, I forget who I was listening to, but I heard somebody say that what Flynn was doing was that he was revealing the fact that the Obama administration was supplying guns to Al-Qaeda. And the very guns that would be used against our own soldiers. And Flynn, that's what Flynn was saying. So they had to take him out of the picture. Plus the fact that Flynn knew how the internet operated. How all of there is like an ecosystem for the internet, right? And there are different factions, different groups, and there are strategies that go along with each one of the groups that's out there. Flynn knew all about that. Now, most people, in their 60s and 70s, it's not clear how much they understand about the technical ecosystem that we're all dealing in. We understand it to a point, for as much as we can view. But there are a lot of, I hate to say this, but like old white guys who really don't know that much about it. And so they're just, they're making decisions in the blind. Mm-hmm. And Flynn was, I believe, set to fix that.
Well, whatever the case, they certainly went after him in a major way, as they did many people in Trump's orbit. And, I'm not unconvinced that if Biden does prevail in this situation, I wouldn't be a bit surprised if they don't go after him, after Trump, post-election, once Biden is in there. There's always been kind of an understanding you don't pursue your political opposition in an election after the election is over. For better or for worse, there's always kind of been that understanding because it would devolve into a type of political warfare that wouldn't be good for the public. I guess that's really the republic. That's kind of the understanding. And I say for better, for worse, because if criminal activity was committed while somebody was in office, I think crime should be punished. That's just my opinion on the matter. But regardless, I see such a vengefulness. I see such a hatred that I wouldn't be a bit surprised. As a matter of fact, I've already seen articles kind of hinting at that. They claim that Trump is vulnerable. He's more vulnerable as a private citizen. So I could totally see them going after him once he's out of office for
I do too. The
crimes.
Democrats have no honor.
Yeah.
So even if he thinks he made a deal with him, he's supposed to be the big deal maker. If he made a deal with him, I think he's mistaken because they have no honor.
Well, I don't think that. How would he make a deal with him? I don't.
Well, to not fight the election results, not seriously anyway.
Well, I do believe he's fighting the election results. I think he's been dealt an uphill battle, however. Let's face it. I mean, Joe Biden had a much easier path to victory because you've got all these major population centers. Trump had to win more states than Biden did in order to be able to squeak in there. Now, he was well on his path to victory when all this fraud happened. And I do say it was fraud. It was very, very clear and convincing evidence, despite what the media and the anti-social media would have us say, or would have us believe.
What? That goes back to that sadistic sense of humor of psychopaths that we were talking about earlier. Because look at how many rallies Trump had and how many people showed up and how many people would show up for the appearances of Joe Biden.
Well, nobody showed up for the appearances.
It's a diabolical, sadistic joke.
Yes. Trump had literally thousands of people at his rallies, where Joe Biden had to rent cars. He rented Jeeps and stuff from a car shop to make it look like he had people there. And then they were honking their horns. I mean, how lame is that? And for many, many months leading up to the election, he didn't even campaign at all. And what I've been saying on Twitter is, what's the point? You don't need to campaign when you got the media campaigning for you. And that's basically what was going on.
Yes, that's true.
They were hammering all his talking points, beating up on his opponent. Hey, he can hide out in the basement all he wants. There's no need to campaign when you got the media, the big, giant monster mouth of the media, doing all your dirty work for you. I mean, even, most people, the Hunter Biden laptop, and I want to correct one little thing I said about that. I said the FBI had it for 2 years. I guess it was only 1. Big deal. The point is, they had it for a long time, held on to it, and did nothing with it. Why? And the only obvious conclusion you can come to is that if Biden got in there, and I'm sure the FBI, the leadership of the FBI, I'm not saying that there aren't some good rank-and-file agents in the FBI that are there for the right reason. They genuinely want to fight interstate crime or whatever. But the point is that the leadership of the FBI, I'm sure, wanted Biden to get in there, and they were going to hold on to this laptop from hell so that they could pull his strings. I mean, think about it, how good that this would be. Oh, you wouldn't want, Hunter Biden's all his child pornography or whatever it is that's on that drive. And I haven't seen it. I'm not making the accusation, but that accusation is out there. That a 14-year-old appeared, a 14-year-old relative, was on the, and he's running around naked. I mean, what's going on here? But why wouldn't the FBI be interested in investigating that or prosecuting that? Well, they wanted it to be able to pull Joe Biden's strings. Very much the way the CIA, we run that promo during the break about the CIA. Well, plug in the FBI to this too. They control these politicians.
Definitely. I'd say the FBI is more central to it than the CIA, frankly.
Yeah, they control these politicians. They have them on the string. They'll do whatever they want. Whenever they got something on you, you dance or be out of office forever. And I believe that's what was going on. So anyway, with regard to the elections, lawsuits are moving forward over the ballot fraud in the key states of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Here's a report for One American News on where we currently stand.
After witnessing ongoing incidents of election fraud in the Badger State, a trio of voters in Wisconsin are taking matters into their own hands by filing a suit claiming the rights of all voters have been violated. In a filing Thursday, they affirmed Wisconsin officials counted illegal votes toward the final tally in violation of the First and 14th Amendments. The plaintiffs say ballot dumping and other instances of fraud disenfranchised legal voters in Dane, Menominee, and Milwaukee counties. As a result, the plaintiffs say Wisconsin results must not be certified unless fraudulent votes are declared invalid. Voters are not the only ones pushing back against fraud, as a group of state senators in Michigan demands an audit of all election results this year. In a letter to the Michigan Secretary of State Thursday, GOP state senators said they had identified thousands of cases of voter fraud. The senators say Michigan election officials counted illegal ballots, counted the same batches of ballots twice, and backdated ballots. They add Democrat officials also used false information to fill out ballots, counted votes cast by dead people, and did not signature match ballots. During a demonstration outside of the Capitol building in Lansing Thursday, voters showed their support of their lawmakers, demanding a full recount must take place before the certification of results to ensure the election is fair and transparent.
Not remaining in our homes. We're on the streets now. And we're in front of the state capitals, and we're not leaving until the state legislatures allocate their electoral votes for President Trump for another 4 years.
Meanwhile, county officials in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania have admitted tens of thousands of ballots received have had errors, from a lack of a signature to an incorrect date.
So yesterday, we had to return a ballot. It was about 13,000 or so ballots. And, there were problematic ballots. And we discussed it. It was approximately about maybe 2,000 or so that was, that didn't have a secrecy envelope or didn't have a signature in the declaration of.
Amid the controversy, however, some officials are showing their support of the multiple efforts in Philadelphia and elsewhere across the nation for voters to have their voices heard.
In order for the process, which it is America, right? It's freedom of speech. People can say whatever they like. People can file lawsuits, if they feel like they've been injured, in some sort of way, and they're trying to rectify that by the courts. That's fine. They're more than welcome to do it.
10,000 votes in Philadelphia are potentially under review due to ballot counting continuing past the state's deadline. Oral arguments for that case are slated for next week in the United States District Court for the Middle District of Pennsylvania.
Okay, we got to take the top of the hour break right now, and we'll continue into the second hour. Stay with us, folks. Govern America continues. Vicky Davis, Darren Weeks, and you. Stay with us. Don't go away.
Before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order.
New world order. New world order.
This is a moment to seize. The kaleidoscope has been shaken. The pieces are in flux. Soon they will settle again. Before they do, let us reorder this world around us.
A new world order.
A world where the United Nations is poised to fulfill the historic vision of its founders.
Nevertheless, the United States is in a key position to shape this so that the problem of the Bush presidency will be the emergence of a new international order.
The first decade of the 21st century, that out of what will be seen as the greatest restructuring of the global economy, a new world order was created.
Documenting the crisis of our republic.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
Waging war on the New World Order.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
This is Govern America with Darren Weeks and Vicky Davis.
Live from FEMA Regions 5 and 10, this is the second hour of Govern America. I'm Darren Weeks. Vicky Davis is here as well. It continues to be the 14th of November, 2020, as we are waiting for presidential results. What is going to be the fate of the nation, ladies and gentlemen? What do we have to look forward to for the next 4 years and perhaps 8 years? Who knows?
Or perhaps forever.
Or perhaps forever. That's exactly right. Because these things that are happening right now are going to have permanent ramifications. I think, you brought up the fact that the Obama administration was arming terrorists in various places in the Middle East. I think we have to, we probably have ISIS to look forward to again. More of these international terrorist groups and organizations, certainly more regime change. That's one thing that, and I don't want to sound like a big Donald Trump fan. Somebody in the chat room, John in the chat room, he was referencing our earlier conversation. He says, I had to wonder, with Trump being elected partially on suggesting he'd lock her up, talking about Hillary Clinton, he later turned around and said, I don't want to hurt them. They're good people. And I said in response to him, we were all wondering about that. That was certainly a slap in the face for the Trump base when he went on, I think it was ABC News, and did an interview and said he didn't want to hurt the Clintons. Because the campaign was one thing, and then all of a sudden it was this sudden about face. And if he was trying to heal the hurt... And he did the same
thing with trade agreements, which was the biggest issue as far as I was concerned.
Yeah, well, me too. And the border issue, although, to be honest with you, I think he's been fairly consistent on the border issue. And in fact, there has been wall that has been built. You can actually go to the customs website and you can see that there's places where the wall has been constructed. They actually had a video there last I knew, like a time lapse kind of thing where they're putting pieces in place where there was no wall before, and it's going up. So there are certain things he's done that have been following through on his promises. One of the things that I think is positive about the Trump administration is he hasn't gotten us into any additional wars. He hasn't, and as a matter of fact, there's evidence, and we've talked about it over the years during his administration, that he has actually tried to pull the troops out of Syria. He's tried, he did a bombing there in response to one of these false flag types of events. But my understanding was it wasn't, and I'm not justifying the bombing, my understanding was as though that it was kind of a insignificant target, something that seemed to be strategically imagined so that it wouldn't cause loss of life and that sort of thing. I don't know. With a limited amount of information that you have about these things, but looking at all of it, and I've written about this before, how his minders, and I'll just put it just like that, his minders, the people that have been placed around him, people like John Bolton, which is one person that we could never forgive Steve Bannon for bringing John Bolton into the administration. Here you have a guy like Steve Bannon, and I like his war room, and we run it on the stream because it's got some good information in it. You reference it from time to time. We play clips on the show from time to time. There's some interesting and important information in there. But that being said, why would Steve Bannon bring somebody like John Bolton into the administration if Steve Bannon is this completely good guy? And that's the problem I have with all of this stuff, Vicky. There's so many scoundrels and so many people who, on the surface, they seem to be good. But on the other hand, they've got a side to them. There's things there. I don't know. I think there's money talking.
Well, if you look at the structure, the whole Republican National Committee and the Democrat National Committee, they're both involved in the National Endowment for Democracy. And the National Endowment for Democracy is connected with USAID. They are the ones that are running the color revolutions, which is basically toppling of governments around the world and redoing election systems to bring in leadership that is going along with the global technocratic system of global governance. Mm-hmm. So, as far as I'm concerned, the whole Republican apparatus from the top down is rotten to the core. But they are the ones that recommend people for positions. So you get the same globalist dirtbags cycling in and out, in and out. Mm-hmm. And that's the way Washington, D.C. works. Yeah. So until the whole economic development system that was established in the 1960s is brought down, and we can get leaders in this country that believe in the Westphalian system of nation states, we won't have our country back. Yeah. Because what they say in public and what they say behind closed doors, I think is most often two different things, and I think they agree. It's a conspiracy against the people, the regular people of the world. In our country, in Canada, in the UK, everywhere. Because it's the leaders of the countries who are leading this revolution against the ordinary people who grew up believing in the nation state. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I guess the reason so I have to be cautious. I don't want people to think that I'm in this what I call the Trump cult, where I'm not able to look at things objectively. I don't think Trump is 100% good. I think he's done some good things, but I think that there's he's certainly the lesser of two evils. Let's put it that way. But there are some things I do think that he's actually sincere about. He's made reference. In fact, he just fired. What was the Esper?
Yeah, Esper, the defense secretary. He's actually rooting out a lot of the military type people, which arguably should have been done on day one of his administration. And I think there was a lot of naivety there on his part. I do chalk it off to naivety. I think Trump probably went into this whole, presidential thing with somewhat of blinders on. I'm sure he probably had an idea that it's a little bit cutthroat, but so is the business world a little cutthroat. And so he probably had an idea that he could handle it. I think once he got in there, he realized just how bad it really was. It's far worse than even the business world, because you're literally having all these interests compete for power and compete for your attention.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's difficult to change institutions. I mean, you can a new leader can come in, but overcoming the institutional inertia is extraordinarily difficult. And I think the only real way that you can do that is to understand what it is that's going on within the institutions and be honest about what you're going to do. It effectively shining a bright spotlight on the cockroaches and say, we're coming for you.
Yeah.
But he hasn't done that, and I think he hasn't done that because he is getting people from the Republican National Committee.
Yeah.
So
who he thinks is his allies.
The corruption and the rot in our institutional framework is so deep that you almost, it's almost like I've spent years studying this, looking mostly at the institutional reorganization that was started during the Bush 41. But actually Reagan started it with the privatization. But you can follow it all the way through and see that it was all strategically planned. These globalists are brilliant planners and manipulators of the institutions of government. I guess they're the ones that were the followers of Gramsci. The long march through the institutions. Well, they've been doing that long march for a long, long time. And so you have to overcome that institutional inertia of moving in this direction of globalization. And, I have tried to get people to understand how important it is to understand the organization of government and the reinvention of government and the impact that it had. And what we should have had, if we had an honest Republican Party, is we should have had people studying the institutional structure and how it changed. But they were just as guilty as the Democrats. They were all involved in it.
Yeah, they were all instrumental in the takedown. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So anyway, we got this situation with the election fiasco we just had. WorldNet Daily reports official responsible for vote count claimed Trump was on the side of Nazis. Can you have an election count, an election, when you have secretaries of state making outrageous claims? This is a Secretary of State overseeing the presidential vote count in Arizona. Said last summer that President Trump was on the side of the freaking Nazis. That was a direct quote. Kathy Hobbs is this woman's name. Also described what happens at Trump rallies as deplorable and called for stopping the Trump agenda, the Washington Examiner reported. So you got an extremist like her saying extreme things like that. How can we expect to have an honest election under her? She's one of these woke social justice warriors, apparently. Then we have, it's kind of interesting, Joe Biden's incoming chief of staff. He once said that the elections were rigged. He said that on Twitter. His name is Robert Klein. And now, of course, now that they have allegedly, and I will say allegedly, prevailed, now they're trying to get you to believe that the elections are fine. There's nothing, it's kind of ironic, this paradigm, Vicky. For the last 4 years, they've been telling us the elections are questionable. That the foreign interests, the Russians, it was all Russia. And the elections are rigged. And now they're trying to tell us, nothing happened untoward.
Yeah, absolutely. Cleanest. Somebody from DHS said these are the cleanest, most honest elections we've had ever.
Yeah, the American system is rock hard, man. So
yeah, you can't. There's nothing that can be done as long as you have a media that is willing to lie and keep on lying and lying and lying. And so,
speaking of lying, we have George Soros. According to FreeBeacon.com, George Soros looms large over Biden transition. Soros employees help Biden transition team. They say Joe Biden's transition team includes several people affiliated with organizations bankrolled by the left-wing billionaire George Soros. What a surprise, huh? Biden's agency review teams, which include lists of individuals responsible for understanding the operations of each government agency, will prepare, quote, President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris to hit the ground running on day one, unquote. Soros is well represented on those lists. Sarah Cross, an advisory director at Soros's Open Society Foundations, received a seat on Biden's State Department transition team. Michael Pan, a special advisor in the executive office of the Open Society Foundations, will join the United States mission to the United Nations team. Oh boy, I'm sure that one is going to be a real heated up situation. Diane Thompson, who is listed as self-employed and a member of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau team, is a current leadership in government fellow at the Open Society Foundations. Yeah. Soros poured more than $70 million into election activity. I bet he did. Backing Biden's candidacy this past cycle. more than 3 times his previous high of $22 million in the 2016 election cycle. Soros and the Democracy Alliance Donor Club previously enjoyed close access to the Obama administration. Under a Biden administration, that access will likely return. Other members of Biden's transition team work for groups that receive heavy funding from the billionaire. Sharon Burke and Viv Graubard, both at the New America think tank, will join Biden's Department of Defense and Department of Labor teams. Soros' Open Society Foundations gave New America more than $1 million last year, according to the group's disclosures. Soros' son Jonathan sits on the New America's board emeriti.
They're a really bad, for anybody that likes to do research, the New America Foundation is central to the tech agenda. When I first saw them, Eric Schmidt was on their board. So
they say
they are one group to watch.
Biden's team also includes 6 employees from John Podesta's Center for American Progress, who are sprinkled across the Treasury, Federal Reserve, Department of Labor, Department of the Interior, National Security Council, Office of the United States Trade Representative. Soros' most recent tax forms shows that nonprofits in his sprawling network gave more than $1 million to Podesta's group in 2018. Finally, 3 people from the Center for Strategic and International Studies and 2 from the Roosevelt Institute received seats on Biden's teams. Both groups recently received hundreds of thousands from Soros' nonprofits. The Democracy Alliance, a network of millionaire and billionaire donors, of which Soros is a co-founder, mapped out a $275 million spending blitz against President Donald Trump for the 2020 elections, according to confidential documents previously obtained by the Washington Free Beacon. Vox described the Democracy Alliance as the closest thing that exists to a left-wing conspiracy in the United States. The network is led by Gara LaMarche, the former director of U.S. programs for Soros' Open Society Foundations, and helps steer the billionaire's agenda. Biden's campaign did not respond to requests for comment. Yeah, I'll bet.
So they're bringing in back the original team from the early 90s, Center for American Progress. They were in on the reinvention of government, right. They were the go-to think tank during that time frame.
Now, here's another interesting thing here, Vicky, because we talk about all the fraud, and Dominion voting systems is a big part of that apparent fraud. And wouldn't you know it, talking about George Soros, according to National File, Dominion Voting Systems shares floor space with the Soros Group and is partnered with Soros' friend.
What a shock.
Yeah, what a shock indeed. Dominion Voting Systems shares an office floor with the George Soros-funded left-wing Tides Foundation in Toronto, National File has learned. Our tipster makes it clear that Soros people are very close with Dominion, which has partnered with a voting technology company chaired by one left-wing billionaire, George Soros' best friends and associates. Dominion was caught flipping votes from President Donald Trump to Joe Biden in the 2020 election, and Trump has cited data to accuse Dominion of widespread vote flipping and vote losing in key states. Dominion is headquartered in Toronto and has a U.S. office in Denver. The Robertson Building's Directory of Tenants, and they have a link here, shows that Dominion voting is listed at both Suite 200, the suite Dominion lists publicly, and also Suite 370, which places it in neighborly range of the Tides Canada Foundation in Suite 360. Tides Foundation in America, based in San Francisco, created and financially supports Tides Canada Foundation. The Tides Foundation has reportedly received more than $20 million in donations from George Soros' groups, and Tides shares Soros' vision for the radical left-wing makeover of Western civilization and the world. Tides has given out money to numerous left-wing groups, including Acorn and Project Vote, and recently created the Black Lives Matter Support Fund.
You know what? I've heard Steve Bannon talk about China's United Front. And if there is a united front operating in the United States, I would have to say that it was the Tides Foundation, centered at the Tides Foundation, which is located or was located at the Presidio. And the Presidio is where Mikhail Gorbachev came to the United States and set up his Gorbachev Foundation, USA.
Mm-hmm.
And if you continue following that through, did you know that Gorbachev was involved in the base closings, our military base closings?
I'm not sure if I ever knew that or not, but well, there was a lot of, and that was during the Clinton years, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was the early 90s. And he was involved in the base closings. What our government, our Congress, the great people that they are, they established these zones for economic development. Mm-hmm. Economic development, by the way, that is the strategy. They come in and bring money and buy off your local officials. But there was a zone they defined called a hub zone, which was the idea of which was redevelopment of closed military bases.
That's interesting that we can have a communist like a communist like Mikhail Gorbachev coming over here from the Soviet Union and being involved in closing down bases here domestically.
Isn't it, though?
Wow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That is just mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing.
It is. And I have an article on it on my website. I'll get you the name of it here in a minute, or it'll be in the show notes. We'll put it in the show notes.
So anyway, they continue here. They say this is just one link between Dominion Voting Systems and George Soros. Access Wire reported that Dominion entered into a 2009 contract with Smartmatic and provided Smartmatic with the PCOS machines, that's the optical scanners, that were used in the 2010 Philippine election, the biggest automated election run by a private company. Smartmatic is chaired by Mark Malloch Brown, who is good friends with George Soros and even called Soros his landlord at a 5-bedroom house in Westchester County, New York. Malloch Brown has worked with Soros on various projects, including as vice chairman of the Open Society Institute and also Soros Fund Management. Mark Malloch Brown is listed as a global board member of George Soros' Open Society Foundations. Here is Mark, and they got a photograph of him with George Soros. Now they say Nancy Pelosi-linked Dominion Voting Systems is under harsh condemnation from President Donald Trump and his supporters after reported vote counting malfunctions in many of the key states. President Trump cited data reported by OAN's Chanel Ryan to state that Dominion flipped votes from Trump to Biden and or lost Trump votes in massive margins in states including Pennsylvania and Georgia, where the flipped or lost vote total is higher than Joe Biden's supposed leads. Now, did you see that little chart of the curves, the Democrat curves, the vote curve, where the Democrats were coming underneath the Republicans, and there was a sudden stop, and then all of a sudden the Democrat vote curve goes straight up to pass the Republican curve, and then they both continue on to the right?
No, who had that?
It's been all over the place.
Oh, okay.
There's a red curve and a blue curve. The red curve representing the Republicans, and the blue curve representing the Democrats. And as they're curving around from left to right and upward, so it's a curve to the up and right gradually, but the Democrat curve falls underneath. In other words, the blue curve falls underneath the red curve, indicating that the Democrats are behind. They're the Biden is behind Donald Trump, and then all of a sudden the curves stop, and the blue curve goes straight up and then they go back to the right again. So this is a meme now on anti-social media, and with the curves and the in fact they're using that as an F. The curves where it goes straight up and back to the right forms an F, and so people are just putting the R-A-U-D underneath it. I think that's a very good meme, but it certainly does effectively. I'll have to find that meme and put it in the show notes.
Yeah, I'd like
I probably
to see it.
have it on Twitter. I'm sure I probably...
I'm not on social media anymore, so I don't see these things.
I don't call it... Yeah, anymore I'm calling it anti-social media. But anyway, Trump tweeted out, report, Dominion deleted 2.7 million Trump votes nationwide. Data analysis finds 221,000 Pennsylvania votes switched from President Trump to Biden. 941,000 Trump votes deleted. States using Dominion voting systems switched 435,000 votes from Trump to Biden. So, Democrat Representative Zoe Lofgren was in Congress, and she was talking about the voting machines. To her credit, she wants things to be, at least her stated, I don't know how she really feels about it, but she sounds like she's making good noises here anyway.
Many have concerns about voting systems with remote access software, and I think we want to make sure that companies no longer sell voting machines that have network capabilities. In 2019, according to a report in Motherboard, a group of election security experts, they uncovered that back-end election systems in at least 10 states were connected to the Internet, despite one company's claim that its systems were not. We need also to understand supply chains. In December 2019, a study released by Interos, a supply chain monitoring company, showed that 1/5 or 20% of the components in a popular voting machine came from China-based companies. Furthermore, close to 2/3, or actually 59%, of suppliers within that machine's supply chain had locations in either China or Russia. I've also heard concerns about the ownership and control of voting machine vendors. Public reporting indicates that all three of the major voting system vendors represented here today are privately held or are partially controlled by private equity firms. I believe it's in the public interest for Congress to better understand who could financially benefit from the administration of our elections. Securing our elections should not be a partisan issue. Election security is about upholding a democracy of, by, and for the people, the American people, be they Republican, Democratic, third party, or no party at all.
And it's not a democracy, it's a republic. But anyway, you were laughing.
Well, she sounds good, but except that this country will never be secure under the global system of trade. As long as you let foreign corporations invest in this country, bring their money, bring their products, and their products are, well, it doesn't even matter if they're high tech. You can put a chip in anything, you know. As long as we have open borders and are not exercising sovereignty over those borders and what comes across, this country will never be secure. I don't care what she says, even though it sounds good, sounds like she cares, but she doesn't. Anybody who really cares would say, close the borders. We don't want foreign money in here. We don't want foreign corporations in here. Because what China did, China brought their money in through business, through American business fronts, through the Cayman Islands. Mm-hmm. So if you have a Chinese company that has an American front on it, and they're going after defense contracts, and the whole paradigm of your economy is to give contracts to small businesses, you know, you're screwing your own security. You have no security.
Yeah.
So security is a whole bit. It's a whole package. You can't be open and closed at the same time.
Yeah. There's in fact, we have another article from from National File. Georgia ex-Kemp staffer lobbies for Dominion. Voting madness leads to lame recount. I guess it's the Georgia Republican governor, Brian Kemp. His former chief of staff has lobbied for Dominion voting systems, the embattled George Soros-linked company that flipped votes from President Donald Trump to Joe Biden in the 2020 election. Dominion products were used in Georgia, where massive vote-counting problems plagued the heart of the citizenry. So I won't read this article, but this is another great article, and it'll be in the show notes. But there's just a lot of funny business going on with this company. And, of course, if we had a real media, they would be investigating it. One American News talks about these things, but they have a fraction of the audience that somebody like, say, Fox News, who's adding to the false legitimacy of this bogus election.
I've been hearing Fox News committed network suicide.
Yes. As a matter of fact, we have a cartoon up on the website which randomly loads. We got comics that randomly load down by the news section on the opposite side of the page, and you go there, and one of those comics that load is a picture of Matt Drudge sticking a dagger through his own chest, and the blood's coming out, and then you got Fox News behind him pointing the finger up in the air and saying, "Wait a minute, is there room for one more?" And that's about the way it is. I understand Matt Drudge's traffic has dropped through the toilet, to the floor, and and Fox News can look forward to the same thing. As a matter of fact, the Catherine Murdoch, she's the wife of Fox News heir. She went public after Fox declared Biden the winner, and she said, "We did it!" with 4 exclamation marks. And my response to her is, started the process of bankrupting your father-in-law's media empire? Yes, I guess you did do that.
Yeah, congrats.
Yeah, congratulations, dummy.
Yeah.
Apparently some of these institutions have discovered or decided that ideology, twisting perception is more important than money, more important than media empires.
Well, you have to understand that there is a short-term loss for a long-term gain. They are looking at the long-term game, which is the global media monopoly.
This isn't going to be a short-term loss for them. And maybe that's the calculus that they didn't take into consideration. But conservatives will not go back. They will not forget. I think Matt Drudge probably thought he could abuse his audience by sounding more and more like the radical left and more like a mainstream news outlet. I mean, I've always felt he was a shill. But I used to go there because there were things he would find that were important. There were things, he had a knack of finding certain things and, aggregating them in one place. So you almost had to go to the Drudge Report just because you felt like if you didn't, you might miss something that you were. And now anymore, there's so much, it's inevitable you're going to miss stuff anyway. But I have a lot of different sources now that I check. And I think it's probably a lot better. I think we're better off because of it. Because centralization of information is never a good thing. It's never a good thing. So
it's centralization, by definition, means control. Centralization of control.
Yeah, you're giving one person or one entity a lot of power over everything.
Which is the fallacy of even talking to the big tech giants, because they will not follow the rules that are set up to prevent them from exercising the power that they have. They have the power.
Yeah.
And so, but I was reading something recently that about the Marxists, and that's what you just said about Drudge, is a Marxist strategy. They start out one way and then they slowly roll. It's a slow roll to
the dark side.
Injecting, things from the left.
Mm-hmm.
That's a strategy.
It's also a part.
So you got to always be on the lookout for something that starts out right and then does a slow roll left.
Not to get too far into the weeds, but it also is a part of satanic initiation. If you go into Satanism, they always take purity and images of purity, and they like to corrupt it. That's one thing for those of us who believe in Christianity. Satan likes to take purity, pure things, and take it and twist it and pervert it into something very devilish. And we see this in pop culture all the time. Because these people, frankly, not to sound like a whack job or anything, but there's a lot of Satanists in the entertainment industry. There's a lot of Satanists in Hollywood. And I do think that they do see themselves as initiating the general public into their rituals.
Well, you know what? That's what the Dadaists, that's D-A-D-A-I-S-M, Dadaism. Mm-hmm. That's what the Dadaists who are practitioners of it did in Germany. It's I guess it came from the Frankfurt School, where they parody the normal culture.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever is good, they make it bad. They make it dirty. That's what they do. That's all the artwork that is just crap, put together into some kind of a shape,
mm-hmm.
or just the ugly art, the ugly, filthy art.
Yeah.
That is that kind of art where they're taking something that should be beautiful, making it ugly.
And that's one of the current communist goals, too, by the way, that was read into the congressional record from the book The Naked Communist by Cleon Skousen, where they wanted to promote ugly art. So
mm-hmm.
It's interesting how all these pieces come together.
Communism and Satanism. I think you said last week that you think that a large part of this is Satanism. Well, it may be just that communism is a different name for Satanism.
Yeah, and by the way, people, I could imagine atheists or whatever in our audience that don't believe. It doesn't matter if you believe or not. These people have demonstrated they believe. The people that are in power, the people that are controlling things, have generated a very clear, it's very clear to me, whether or not you believe in religion, whether or not you believe in a higher power, whether or not you believe that there's a spirit world, they believe it. It's very clear that they believe it because they're putting their stuff into pop culture everywhere. I mean, all you have to do, a case in point, what I'm talking about with the corrupting. Look how many vulgar pop stars have come through Disney. Disney, they start off being innocent children, and next thing you know, they're gyrating around stage like a bunch of tramps, like whores.
Not the Disney that I grew up with, certainly.
So they're doing a lot of things like that. And even cartoons. They take, Disney is especially egregious. They've hidden erected penises in the cartoons as subliminal messages. It's sick. These people are sick. And you got to ask yourself the question, what kind of mind do they have employed for them that they think this is okay? That they think this is good? Didn't mean to get off on that tangent, but I think it's important. Because these people have an enormous amount of influence in society.
Yeah, they've basically taken it over, and that's why, most normal people are sitting on the sidelines saying, what the hell is going on? Yeah, exactly. Somebody in the chat room says tons of sex subliminals in Disney films and cartoons. Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, there's a website, and I've referenced it before many times in the past, vigilanttcitizen.com. If you want to go there and take a look, this is a website that specializes in the symbolism of pop culture. And talk about going down a rabbit hole. It's just, once you see it, and they document it over and over and over and over again, it's everywhere. All these symbols. And it can't, if you look at this, these are actual symbols. And I've seen them in public, even on stuff like cucumbers, where they're doing the one eye sign. They have a black child holding a cucumber over one eye. Now, why bother doing that? It's the one-eyed symbol. The back of the dollar bill, the all-seeing eye. And the stars are doing this everywhere. In magazine covers, they are covering one eye. They're showing people who's in control of the publication. They're showing people who's in control of their career. So anyway, I know that sounds a little bit conspiratorial. Go look at it. Look at it for yourself. And you can say, well, why should I believe vigilanttcitizen.com? These are real pictures. You can go look at the original source material if you want. When you see the same thing over and over and over and over again, it's not by accident. It's not by accident. They're putting it in your face. They're shoving it right in your face and saying, see, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? I think that's probably true. I really haven't gone down that rabbit hole. But I think that's probably true. And there's probably some subgroup of graphics artists who specialize in that sort of thing, I imagine.
Well, what it demonstrates to me is they have their players in key positions in every industry. Every industry. And how many years has it taken them to get that? It just gives you an idea of what we're really up against, unfortunately. But people need to wake up and realize this isn't all conspiracy theory. And by the way, how much of what's going on today did those quote-unquote nut-job conspiracy theorists talk about many, many years ago? So you're going to hit us with, oh, well, that's just conspiracy theory. You're going to hit us with that? You're living a nightmare right now. How long are you going to continue with that finger-wagging accusation? We have, on election night, we had the much-talked-about pipe burst, Vicky. You remember the pipe burst?
No, I don't.
Well, you couldn't watch the news because the election results in Georgia were massively delayed because of a supposed pipe burst. And Fox News referenced it, and they thought, wow, we're still not seeing any elections out of Georgia. Oh, that pipe burst must really be a thing, man. Well, we got text messages.
Pipe burst at one location, or where was this pipe burst supposed to be?
Well, let's just read the article. Officials in Georgia have not been able to produce any invoices or work orders related to a pipe burst at Atlanta's State Farm Arena that was blamed for an abrupt pause in vote counting on election night. The only evidence for the pipe burst released under Freedom of Information laws was a text message exchange in which one senior employee at the stadium described it as, quote, highly exaggerated, a slow leak that caused about an hour-and-a-half delay, unquote, and that, quote, we contained it quickly and it did not spread, unquote. Beyond the lack of documentary evidence of the inspection or repair of a ruptured pipe, we are being asked to believe that there is not one single picture of this allegedly ruptured pipe, at a time and a place where virtually everything is recorded and documented, said Georgia lawyer Paul Dzikowski, excuse me, I know I butchered it, who obtained the text messages and told news.com.au in an email on Wednesday night. The right-wing Gateway Pundit website first reported the story on Wednesday. President Donald Trump mentioned the burst pipe in his speech Friday, where he claimed key battleground states where he was leading, Mr. Biden suspiciously stopped counting on Tuesday night. Anyway,
that's the dumbest thing I ever heard. I'm sorry, I got to just say that.
No, that's okay.
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. What happens when you have a pipe burst? You turn the water off.
Well, supposedly,
boom, done.
Supposedly they, I don't know any details about it. Whether they had crews there that you would think they'd have building crews there at all times, especially during an election.
I'm absolutely positive that they did. They probably have union members who are assigned to be there.
I'm sure they got paid very well.
During all functions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in fact, the guy said they contained it quickly. So
turn the water off.
And he said it was a slow leak. It wasn't a pipe burst. But see, that's how they do. This was an excuse, evidently, to rig the vote, to stop.
It's another insulting, in-your-face, diabolical sense of humor. I mean, a slow leak in a pipe and they stop the election for an hour and a half? Give me a break.
Yeah. Well, they stopped the count.
They should have stopped nothing. Yeah. Absolutely nothing.
No, I agree. But you're right. It's completely in your face. So there's a lot of fraud, and another thing that's in your face is the fraud here in Michigan. Here's a report from Just the News.
A new lawsuit being brought in Michigan's 3rd Judicial Circuit Court by the Great Lakes Justice Center alleges that poll workers in Michigan's Wayne County were instructed to backdate ballots and not verify signatures on Election Day. An attorney representing the center said that their main concern is, quote, the clear fraud that occurred in the counting process of the votes in Wayne County and the way votes were manufactured by workers that were there. The center is asking that the court void the results of the election and ask for an entirely new vote to take place in the county in which Detroit is located. Upwards of 5 election workers in Detroit have signed sworn affidavits claiming that they were told to backdate mail-in ballots and ignore any deficiencies with ballots that they saw. Several workers were also allegedly told not to request identification from in-person voters. One poll challenger said she saw election workers, quote, encouraging voters to do a straight Democrat ballot, while another worker said he saw thousands of ballots being counted from unknown, unverified voters with birth dates marked January 1st, 1900. This suit is one of many in the early stages of litigation being brought by allies of President Trump and defenders of voter integrity who are alleging massive bouts of voter fraud took place during this presidential election.
Okay, so I just wanted to give that as a backgrounder, and I have some audio here of one of the people that in Warren County that signed a sworn affidavit claiming that she witnessed vote fraud. And it again focuses on these Dominion voting systems. And we're beating up on Dominion today, but honestly, the election systems and services, the Diebold, all of these other systems, and there's more beyond that as well. I don't think these things can be made secure.
They can't.
I think the courts have ruled that they don't have to open up their code to public scrutiny because it's proprietary. I think the only way you can secure an honest election is to have paper ballots. Go back to paper ballots with glass boxes, so that you can see inside, to prevent false bottoms and that sort of thing, and to have lots of poll workers everywhere at every location. Because,
well, you know what?
By poll workers, I mean watchers.
Even if you could look at their source code, it wouldn't make any difference because compiled code can be patched. And software companies do it all the time. All the time.
Well, and the other thing is having these things, too, where they can connect to the Internet or even to a phone line is just
and it can be wireless and a chip on the board that you can't even see.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. So computerized voting, in fact, there's an article, I should put it in the show notes. Computerized voting, it's something like a black box.
Black box voting. That was Harris's group.
Yeah, did it really count your vote? I can't remember exactly what the title is. I thought I could, but I'll put it in the show notes though, because that really gives a real good primer on why you shouldn't trust computerized voting to tabulate results in an election. Anyway, as I said, there's this whistleblower that came forward from the Detroit area. Her name was Melissa-Carone. She said she witnessed several ballots counted more than once. She was on Lou Dobbs' show on Fox Business.
Breaking news now. We have obtained a new whistleblower complaint from a woman in Wayne County, Michigan. It lays out in detail what appears to be outright illegality that took place inside the TCF Center in downtown Detroit. The sworn affidavit signed by IT worker Melissa-Carone exposes how ballots were scanned and counted, in some cases multiple times, how Republicans were pushed aside, cut out of the oversight process to which they are entitled, and even details of how ballots were illegally altered by other election workers. Part of her affidavit reads, quote, "I witnessed countless workers rescanning the batches without discarding them first, which resulted in ballots being counted 4 to 5 times. Joining us tonight with much more is the author of that sworn affidavit, Melissa-Carone. She was contracted by Dominion Voting Services to offer technical support while votes were being counted in Detroit. David Coleman, who is Melissa's attorney, joins us here this evening. We welcome you both. Multiple counts of the same ballots. How did that happen?
So the workers are handed ballots in stacks of 50s. They're referred to as batches, and they run them through the tabulators. When the ballot has any kind of a mark on it, it'll stop. The tabulator will stop completely, and the computer will put up an error, and it'll say, ballot number 25 has an error. And so the process would be to take ballot number 25, as well as all of the other ballots that had already went through the tabulator, off, put them back in a pile, put ballot number 25 on top of the stack, discard the whole batch, and rescan it.
And instead they went through that process several times. Describe the night shift chaos that you described. Food vans apparently showing up, but not with food, but with ballots, apparently. Give us a sense of what happened there.
So I worked a 24-hour shift. I started at 6 a.m. and I got off at 6 a.m. The next day. So I was there during their day shift and their night shift. The city provides the workers with food for their shift. Well, they only had enough food for 1/3 of their workers. So that is the reason why they were claiming that these vans were brought in, but these vans did not have food taken out of them.
And the vans that showed up, they were supposed to be filled with food. What did they have in them? Do you know?
I never saw anything being brought out of the vans. I know that whatever was being brought out of the vans was being brought out of the back of the vans. But I was not allowed over in that area at all. But the vans were definitely not big enough to be carrying enough food for 2/3 of those workers.
David, I want to turn to you. How well protected is Melissa as a contractor for Dominion voting, the voting systems, and your role here? Well, I'm the lead attorney with Great Lakes Justice Center. We filed the complaint on behalf of 2 voters and residents of Wayne County. Melissa is one of our witnesses who provided an affidavit, as well as many other people. We have affidavits from another whistleblower, Jesse Jacob, who is an employee of the city of Detroit, right. Worked in the election department. She delineates all kinds of fraud and problems she saw. And then also an attorney, Zachary Larson, who's a former Michigan Assistant Attorney General, worked under both Republican and Democrat administrations, and he saw many acts that were incredibly concerning to him. We got an affidavit just this afternoon, Lou, from Ruth Johnson, who is our former Secretary of State, who just left that position 2 years ago. And she reviewed our complaint and all the affidavits, and she recommended to the court, we had a hearing today at 3 o'clock, and she recommended to the court that the court intervene and take action to order an audit. Michigan now has a new constitutional provision that allows voters to request a results-oriented audit to ensure the accuracy and integrity of elections. So we're asking the court, and we did it today, we had about a 2-hour hearing. The judge is going to rule at noon on Friday as to whether or not an injunction will issue to stop the certification of the votes.
Okay, let me hold it right there. We got the top of the hour break. We continue on the other side. Stay with us. Hour number 3 of Govern America straight ahead.
Before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order.
New world order. New world order.
This is a moment to seize. The kaleidoscope has been shaken. The pieces are in flux. Soon they will settle again. Before they do, let us reorder this world around us.
A new world order.
A world where the United Nations is poised to fulfill the historic vision of its founders.
Nevertheless, the United States is in a key position to shape this so that the problem of the Bush presidency will be the emergence of a new international order.
The first decade of the 21st century, that out of what will be seen as the greatest restructuring of the global economy, a new world order was created.
Documenting the crisis of our republic.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
Waging war on the New World Order.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
This is Govern America with Darren Weeks and Vicky Davis.
Live from Fremont Regions 5 and 10, this is the third and final hour of Govern America. I'm Darren Weeks. Vicky Davis is here as well. It continues to be the 14th of November, 2020. The website for the show is governamerica.com. That's governamerica.com. You can get a lot of latest news and information on the main page. Also, past broadcasts on demand. The website to listen live is there at live.governamerica.com. So go to the website. Also, Vicky Davis's information, thetechnocratictyranny.com and channelingreality.com. Go check out her research. Very important stuff as she goes back into history and examines all of these stuff that has led us to this point. Very important to understand. By the way, I wanted to say one other thing, too, because as always, we don't move fast enough through the information that we have. We're overwhelmed, Vicky. We have a lot of stuff here, and there's more coming down the pipe all the time. And so I want to tell people that we will probably be having extra shows. So if you want to be notified on your phone when we have an extra show, and it could very well happen this week, text GOVERN to 80123, and we can notify you when we're doing a show. outside of normal scheduled Saturday broadcasts. We don't use it any more than necessary. Actually, it costs money to use every time we use it. So just so you know, we're not going to be spamming you a bunch of texts. But I did want to have a system where we can get the word out that we're going live, sometimes maybe on a very short notice, and that's the solution. So, I mentioned this, what was it, last week? When we had the...
last week.
Last week, the Shoutcast server went down during the show, and it was actually down for quite a while. We got it back up eventually, but people didn't, a lot of people didn't know we were back up or whatever, and it just moved on with their Saturday, and maybe didn't hear this, but I used as an example the Periscope. Periscope is one of these things, these platforms where people go live anytime they want, and there's notifications that happen for people that, are following those particular accounts. And I thought it was a good idea, because you can, you got a broadcaster that you find useful or have information that you like, or you just like their personality, whatever. You want to see their broadcasts, you can be notified of those. But I don't like relying upon other platforms to... I don't want to be so platform dependent that somebody can just shut me down. For instance, just like our Shoutcast server last week. I'm assuming that was a legitimate outage and it wasn't something nefarious. But if it happened a lot, if it happened regularly, I would be shopping for a different Shoutcast provider. I like being able to fire people if they're not doing the job. And when you put all your eggs in one basket, you can't do that. If I rely upon Periscope to get the message out for a broadcast, Twitter owns Periscope, and they're known now for being a censorship dungeon. So all they would have to do is cancel my Twitter account, and next thing you know, whoops, there it goes. Everything you worked for, everything you built up. So I don't want to be in that position. So we're devising systems that are as platform independent as possible. And that's one thing we're doing here. So you simply, if you text govern to 80123, we can notify you that we're going live. Then you just tune into the regular stream and we'll be there. So that's how that works. So anyway, moving along here. Before the break, we were playing audio from Melissa-Carone. She appeared on Fox Business. Now, I don't know if you were confused by that appearance, Vicky, but I know I was. I didn't, at first I didn't believe this woman, because I know the other side sometimes will put people in places where they make allegations that are questionable or unprovable at best. Now, I guess she did sign a sworn affidavit, so that's pretty weighty. But I didn't quite understand what she was saying, the food vans and all this stuff. She didn't actually say that they had unloaded ballots off the food van, but it was certainly implied. I think what she said is very important. Well, I came to that determination because I did some digging. I went a little further than just the Fox Business interview, which, honestly, I love Lou Dobbs, but you can tell he's getting older, and he's not quite as sharp as he used to be as far as interviewing. And
you hurt my feelings.
Well, no, you're sharp. I'm not talking about you.
Yeah, well, but we're all getting older.
Well, certainly that's the case, and but the thing is Lou Dobbs. I love the man, but he's just, he's paid millions of dollars. I get nothing for this show, so who am I to throw stones, right? But the point is I felt like if I had her on my show, I would have drilled down. One thing that makes me think that she's legit is she's not a very good talker. Okay? And that sounds, that's kind of a weird thing to say. No, I don't think so. Most of the people, if somebody was a plant, if somebody was making an allegation that isn't true for a specific purpose, in other words, they were an actor, somebody you brought in to try to, kind of do the agent provocateur type of thing. You coach them.
Yeah, they would be polished.
Very polished. There you go. Thank you. They would be very polished. She clearly is not. I had to edit. In fact, what I'm about to play you is heavily edited. The Fox Business thing I edited. And I didn't edit it to change what she's saying. I edited it, number one, to clarify what she's saying, because she repeats certain aspects of her story, and there's a lot of and the usual thing that you would normally see where somebody's just trying to talk and they're not a professional speaker. So
it's very difficult, by the way. I did that a lot when I first started out.
We all do,
and I still do it.
Yeah,
I still do it because I'm still not, even though I've done this for quite a few years, I'm still not good at it. So
I think you're good at it. But somebody just starting out, she's clearly just some girl that witnessed something and decided, you know what, I should say something about this. And I guess she is a Republican. I guess she is a Trump supporter. So that provided her an additional incentive to expose the fraud. But as I said, I didn't believe her at first, but then the more, because she has details. And the more I listened to her and the details of her story, here she is being interviewed on a separate podcast called Red Pill. I don't know what the host's name was, and I didn't want to go digging too deep because it was late and I wanted to get this done. But as I said, clearly she has not been coached. And I spent a long time editing this to get it to where it was even presentable. So without further ado, here's what she has to say.
The training was literally an hour. We were handed a binder with paperwork and we were told to read it. We were not allowed to touch any hardware at all. We were there strictly to assist the poll workers.
I mean, so they weren't worried about systems going down or anything? I mean, did they have anybody actually working on the systems?
Actually, the systems did go down twice. It was a row of computers. Somebody tripped on a cord, and the systems were down. Did they have anybody working on their computers, you say?
Yeah.
No. Detroit had their own IT team that consisted of 3 employees that were walking around doing the exact same thing that I was.
Okay, all right. So in assisting the poll workers, what were you expected to do?
The mail-in ballots, when they're ran through the tabulating machine, they get jammed a lot. I'd say 4 to 5 times in an hour each. The ballots are handed to the counters in stacks of 50, referred to as a batch. Mm-hmm. When the counters get the batch, they set it on the tabulating machine, which really they call it a scanner. The tabulator will take the ballots, pick them up, and scan through them. Mm-hmm. And the ones that are being tabulated will go on the top of the machine, and then the ones on the bottom, are pulling through.
Sure.
So we're going to use ballot number 25 as the problem ballot, just as an example, okay?
So the middle of the stack.
Right, yeah. If ballot number 25 had, say, wine spilled on it, the computer would throw up an error.
Okay, let me pause it right there. It might be a little confusing. What she's talking about here are the mail-in ballots. Because you can think, well, why would somebody be drinking wine in a voting booth? No, we're talking about mail-in ballots now. They're feeding these things in. Because my first thought, I wasn't paying close enough attention. My first thought was, well, gee, at our election poll place, these things are fed in one at a time. Why would they be feeding 50 at a time? What they were doing was feeding the mail-in ballots. So they could have all kinds of stuff spilled on them. They could be just a total mess. And so they're feeding these things through the machine 50 at a time. So, anyway, let's pick it up there.
That says, ballot number 25, error, it'll say discard or rescan. So, the proper way to go about this is to take ballot number 25, pull it out slowly because it would get jammed if there was a problem with it too. Mm-hmm. So, I would tell them, the worker, to pull it out slowly, make sure you don't rip it. Take ballot number 25 and the 24 ballots that were already tabulated on top of the tabulator, and put them all back in a stack of 50. Put ballot number 25 on top and hit discard, and then rescan.
Okay, so it's a fresh scan. That first 24 that you scanned, it's like you didn't even scan it.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So, and the reason for taking the problem ballot and putting it on top is just to save time, because, if that ballot doesn't go through again, it's going to be on the very top. I walked past one of the counters, and his machine had a number. So there's going to be a number on the left-hand side.
Okay, now listen to what she says here. This is really important because this is part and parcel of the fraud that's going on here.
So there's going to be a number on the left-hand side of the machine, on the left-hand side of their computer sitting in front of them, that's going to show a total number of ballots that were tabulated on that tabulator, which could be any number, okay? Then on the right-hand side, there's going to be a number that should never go over 50 because the batches come in 50.
Sure.
Well, his number was in the 500s.
Oh, wow.
So I said, stop, don't even touch anything. I'll be right back. I have to go grab my manager because this is a big problem. What that meant was that every ballot that he had in that batch of 50 had been scanned 8 to 10 times.
Right.
Counted 8 to 10 times.
Okay, so those ballots were duplicated 8 to 10 times, which resulted in far more votes than were actually taken in.
Absolutely. And that was one person that I saw their number.
Yeah.
Now, this happened countless times. I started work at 6 a.m. and I worked a 24-hour shift.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I was there for the day shift and the night shift. And then I went home to get some sleep, returned at 10 a.m. and worked till 2 p.m. And then I was done on the 4th.
And just to interject, how many people were running these tabulators?
Approximately 40.
40. Okay, so this could have happened a lot.
Oh, it happened. I couldn't even tell you. So I confronted my manager. My manager came over. His name is Nick, and he's also a co-owner of the company of Dominion Voting.
Oh.
And yeah. So I brought him over, and I said, Nick, we have a huge problem here. And he said, Melissa, can I talk to you over here for a second? And he pulled me aside, and he said, the last thing I want to hear is that we have a huge problem. We are here to assist with IT. We are not here to run their election. At that point, I was just shocked, and I watched to see what he was going to do, if he was going to take care of it. He didn't. He literally walked away.
What do you think of so far, Vicky?
I think I'd be very interested in seeing a hand recount.
My question is, how do you...
Because if they're playing a game of, multiple runs through the system, well, first it says a lot about the system.
Yeah.
That they could do that.
Yeah, that's true.
But secondly, if you did a hand recount, it would reveal the fraud.
Yeah. If you could get honest people. If it could be an honest recount. But this guy has stock in the company. He's actually a patent holder for this system, evidently.
That's the way contractors are. I hate to, break the news here, but contractors, they are in it for the money, and they would not want to rock the boat with the client.
She's the contractor. She's the contractor.
I know she's working for the guy who has the machines. And what the guy with the the owner, the co-owner of the company with the machines,
I see what
said,
you're saying.
We are not here to audit their process. We are here to support the machines.
I see what you're saying. Well, you would think that you would want an honest process just for the sake of the country.
No.
If in fact...
Not a contractor. Absolutely not. They just, his interest is in the IT and the machines. And that's it.
Yeah, but it's not...
Because they are the Secretary of State or whoever set that up, that's the client, and the way that those machines are being used, not his business. He's got blinders on. I'm just telling you, that's the way it is.
I understand what you're saying. It demonstrates a lack of integrity.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, I know, Mr. Understatement. Mr. State the Obvious. Thank you.
Well, no, I just didn't want to say that exactly straightforwardly like that, but that is the truth.
So his name...
the IT consultants and consulting firms, probably the most crooked people on the face of the earth. There, I said it.
They're in good company. There's a lot of those. This guy is Nick Econom. It's Ikonomakis. So that's Economakis, I guess. Nick Economakis.
Does that look Greek?
Well,
just curious.
I don't know. I don't know what Greek. I don't do Greek, but
okay.
Nick Economakis. Ikonomakis. I think she spells it in here too. But he's a part owner. He's a patent holder, and he's overseeing the whole mess. And she didn't know that. She actually learned that from her fellow employee, because I guess she was the only contractor there, at least that she knew of. But they did have some other employees working there. Anyway, they go on with this story, and you thought what was there was shocking. Vicky, it gets even more shocking.
So since you said that Nick is a co-owner of Dominion, I mean, that's very publicly information. I mean, can you tell us his last name?
His last name is spelled Ikonomakis. Ikon as in Nancy. Omakis. He's a patent holder too.
Vice President of Development at Dominion.
Yeah. Okay, so he never came out and told me that he was a co-owner of the company.
Okay.
That was inside information that I was given by two of the employees that I was working with.
All right, so after you alert him to the fact that there is a massive miscounting going on, the only thing he's interested in, is the appearance of things running smooth. Was that the only problem you witnessed, or was there more?
Oh, there's several more. When one of the counters could not read a ballot, that employee would go get a blank ballot and fill it out as they pleased without a Republican or a Democrat next to them judging, and sign the signature of the voter.
Forging the voter's signature.
Oh, yeah. Jeez.
Yeah, can you believe this?
Oh, man, that would be so easy to catch with a hand audit.
Yeah.
What state is this in?
This is my state, here in Michigan. It's in the Detroit area, Warren County.
Okay.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Go get a blank
ballot. I can't believe somebody would be so stupid as to do that.
Apparently, they did it all night. I guess.
Uh-huh.
It's mind blowing. It's mind blowing that people would do that. I mean, they're putting themselves highly in jeopardy. I mean,
well, they're making themselves liable, and vote fraud is a felony.
Yeah,
felony.
They don't care.
Don't they teach our young people in schools anymore about signing things and
the schools
reading?
Come on, Vicky, what planet are you on? Teaching things in school?
I don't know. Different one, I guess.
Fill it out as they pleased without a Republican or a Democrat next to them judging, and sign the signature of the voter.
Forging the voter's signature.
Yes. I witnessed that all day and all night.
Did you notice a pattern with the votes that they were forging?
I sure did. So, yeah, this was crazy. Not one time in a 24-hour shift did I see a single ballot for Trump. Not one time.
Can you approximate how many ballots that might have been?
They signed?
Yes, that they might have signed over that 24-hour shift.
Thousands.
Wow.
There was a table. There was a white table that we were supposed to direct them to.
Mm-hmm.
That was for they were calling them the duplicate ballots. Yeah, Samuel was a full-time employee for Dominion, and he had worked there for a couple of years. He was really close with Nick. Those two, had talked a lot. You could tell that they were really close. Samuel and one other person were responsible for inputting every number into the main PC with absolutely no oversight at all. Nobody assisting or watching. Nobody.
At this point, had the Republican poll watchers been moved out of the room? Was this just a free-for-all at this point?
No, they both worked doubles too, so they did that all day and all night.
Okay. Was there anybody else that was noticing all of these various discrepancies?
I know this to be a fact.
Okay.
I was the only Republican
really
working. They were making terrible, terrible comments about Republicans, about Trump supporters, anybody that had an American flag on their mask or their shirt.
Yeah.
They were automatically deemed, Trump supporters and racist and, just saying the most awful things. So not one time did I ever come out and give my views on anything. Right.
Isn't it illegal for poll workers to be wearing any type of insignia for any specific political party? Or
yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
And didn't you see that as well?
I did, sir. Yeah, I did. And what I saw was a lot of Black Lives Matter masks, a lot of I Can't Breathe masks, and we all know that that they belong to the Democratic Party.
What do you think so far, Vicky?
I'm shocked. I would really like to be part of the audit team to audit the process and the contract and the ballots.
Now, I have one more clip from her where she addresses the vans, which she mentioned in the Lou Dobbs interview. These vans were purportedly to deliver food. No food was ever seen being unloaded off of them. And after their appearance, it was announced that a bunch more ballots had been found.
These vans were initially supposed to be there because the city of Detroit was responsible for providing food and, lunch for the morning shift and dinner for the night shift. The city of Detroit only had enough food for a third of the workers.
Okay.
On day shift and on night shift. So that was their excuse for bringing these vans in. There is absolutely no way that these vans could have been holding food, carrying that much food for 2/3 of the workers there. Mm-hmm. Never, not once did I see food being carried out of any of those vans, neither one of them.
Really?
No. They were unmarked vehicles. So what was coming out of them was coming out of the back of them into the back doors up the stairs.
Okay.
So with the last van, it was a transit. It was like a grayish color. Right when I got in my car, I turned my radio on. That's when I had heard all the new ballots that Detroit had just found.
So another thing that she mentioned that I didn't bother to clip because, as I said, this process was very painful to edit out all the pauses and all the various things. She did say that they were not supposed to allow anyone to leave and then come back, that was illegal. If you left the building, you're supposed to not be let back in. I guess during the day that was enforced, and this is, of course, to prevent somebody from smuggling anything in. But she said that the rules were not enforced for the night shift. She said people were allowed to go smoke cigarettes outside. People were coming and going. She said nobody was trained at night. She bumped into one of her friends and his girlfriend, and he told her that he'd received no training whatsoever. So it sounds like it was a total free-for-all. She was supposed to have appeared on Sean Hannity's show. That was kind of interesting because in the interview that you just heard audio from, they said that night she was supposed to have appeared on Sean Hannity, but the Fox News producer was combative, asking her a bunch of questions, and then canceled her appearance about 30 minutes before the show. So that's interesting.
Yeah, it is. That's
I don't know.
Interesting in and of itself.
Yeah.
It kind of sounds like it was amateur hour. What was the deal with the contract? Did the company that had the machines, did they have the contract to manage the whole process, or what?
I don't know the details on exactly how the contracts work. I would imagine the city contracted the company Dominion, and then, or I don't know. I don't guess they buy the machines. Maybe they do. I don't know. But I'm guessing they contract it, and then Dominion subcontracts out the for any additional help they need at the time. That's how I would imagine.
Well, that kind of sounds stupid enough to be true.
Okay. But this whole thing is, and if it's designed, and if it's a mess, it's designed to be a mess.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way I see it.
Yeah.
So there you go. Then we have Lieutenant General Thomas McInerney, because last week we talked about hammer and scorecard, and I wanted to come back to that briefly. Lieutenant General Thomas McInerney just came out, and he's speaking out against these election-stealing software systems, hammer and scorecard. OAN did a report on it yesterday.
President Trump's sudden and unexpected loss of predictably red states on election night has raised serious questions about voter fraud, particularly among those in the intelligence community. Insiders warn of interference by powerful software developed for the CIA that was essentially designed to steal elections. Retired Lieutenant General Thomas McInerney, who was formerly the Assistant Vice Chief of Staff of the U.S. Air Force, says the two pieces of software are called hammer and scorecard, and describes them as a Democrat superweapon for voter fraud.
And if you look at what's going on with the polls and the complicity of the mainstream media on the New York Post article about Biden, you quickly understand the complicity and the cooperation that's going on between the Democratic Party and the mainstream media. They are one and the same.
Hammer was originally used to keep tabs on international terrorists, but under former FBI Director James Comey and former CIA Director John Brennan, it was redesigned to target American citizens, specifically the left's political opponents like Donald Trump. This software is highly illegal, but with President Obama's blessing, these deep state operatives went to work on not only discrediting Donald Trump, but on undermining the 2016 election. Scorecard was the other program and was designed as a vote manipulation application, which alters votes as they're being entered into the system. General McInerney says these efforts were thwarted in 2016, and that's why Hillary Clinton still insists she won the election. His claims are supported by texts from former FBI officials Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, who were apparently worried their activities would be discovered. But now, in 2020, the programs were successful and managed to sabotage the election of President Trump by instead reallocating his votes to Joe Biden.
Scorecard steals the elections by tampering with the computers at the transfer points. They use a very highly skilled algorithm that the source created, and this was to be used in foreign countries and by the CIA. They converted it to the U.S., and that's the danger that we now face.
A number of viewers have written in to One America News complaining that when they voted for President Trump, they watched as their vote was automatically changed on the screen to Joe Biden. McInerney claims only a small number of votes are being altered, under 3%, to avoid setting off any alarms, although that's still more than enough to throw the election in key battleground races. Pearson Sharp, One American News.
So it's definitely, they're pulling out all the stops, Vicky. It's incredible.
Well, and it's not really surprising because, as we know, the World Economic Forum announced the Great Reset.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, while we tend not to put the global political goings-on together with our domestic situation, they are inextricably linked.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I find it interesting, the New York Times, they came out and told a little bit too much truth and ended up deleting their tweet. They say the role of declaring the winner of a presidential election in the U.S. falls to the news media. Now, I say...
Who said that?
The New York Times on Twitter. And by truth, what I mean is this is what they've been doing. It's not the way it should be, but that's what they said. They said the role of declaring the winner of a presidential election in the U.S. falls to the news media. The broadcast networks and cable news outlets have vowed to be prudent. Here's how it will work, and they put a link to a story. Then, after they received a lot of backlash, they deleted the tweet and replaced it and basically said, correction! We've deleted an earlier tweet that referred imprecisely, Vicky, to the role of the news media in the U.S. presidential election. The news media projects winners and reports results. It does not declare the winner of the election. Well, the first tweet was actually more accurate. They do declare winners and losers. So,
but they're getting pushback on it. They're not authorized to do that, and what they say is not official in any way whatsoever.
No, but if it's let go, very much the way they're calling Biden the president-elect, if it's let go, and Trump is under tremendous pressure to concede, it will become the reality, even though it wasn't the reality. I mean, just the sound bites we've been playing here moments ago is enough of a reason to say, okay, let's put the brakes on this thing. This whole thing is bogus. It's absolutely bogus. By the way, one other thing about this thing in Detroit. Just the News reports Detroit contracted poll workers from firm owned by key figure in ex-mayor's corruption case. More than $1 million awarded to PIE Management LLC, created by former Kwame Kilpatrick aide William A. Phillips. Kilpatrick's in prison for corruption. They say when the city of Detroit needed workers to staff its election center this fall, it turned to a familiar figure in city politics, lawyer and entrepreneur William Phillips, whose name a few years earlier appeared often in the corruption case of disgraced and still imprisoned ex-mayor Kwame Kilpatrick. On September
isn't that special?
What could possibly go wrong? On September 22nd, the city council approved a $1 million contract for Phillips' staffing firm, PIE Management LLC, to hire up to 2,000 workers to work the polls and staff ballot counting machines. They will provide up to 2,000 employees, Detroit residents, the ability to operate election equipment on Election Day as poll workers under the MID cooperative agreement with the state. The city council boasted about PIE. Dominion Voting Systems, which provides voting equipment and software for the city, also got fresh money that day for additional machines to count absentee ballots. A week later, Phillips' firm was advertised for Election Day workers, offering them a handsome sum for 1 day's work and some training. Candidates must be 16 years or older, the firm's advertisement read. Candidates are required to attend a 3-hour training session. As you've heard today, there was no 3-hour training session. If there was a training session at all, it was much less than that. Before the general election. The position offers 2 shifts and pay rates. Number 1 from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at $600, and number 2 from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. at $650. For the advertised 8 or 12-hour shifts of work, the temporary employees were earning at least $50 an hour. It goes on from there. It'll be in the show notes like everything else. But then we see in Wisconsin, Republicans say thousands in Wisconsin may have circumvented voter ID requirement. So there's that article from the Washington Examiner. I won't read it in the interest of time. Just want to point that out. And there's an interesting article in Revolver News, revolver.news, where they talk about remedies, and they say the law is clear. If an election is stolen, state legislatures can restore the will of the people. So it's a pretty enlightening article as far as how the Electoral College system works. They say Trump and his team are under a relentless media blitz campaign, which has only one goal, pressuring the president to concede the election and stop asking questions about suspicious behavior in decisive states. Thuggish CNN anchor Jake Tapper is openly proposing that those who question the election should have their own careers ruined. The sheer intensity of this campaign is proof enough that Trump should not concede. A campaign this brazen can only be motivated by one thing: fear. Democrats and their press adjuncts fear what a full investigation of last week's vote might reveal. Trump must continue his campaign, but the president must not act alone. State-level Republicans must rally behind him and conduct a full audit of the election results. If enough evidence of fraud is found, these state-level Republicans must be prepared to assemble state legislators in emergency sessions to choose slates of pro-Trump electors. Such an action is not illegal. In fact, in the face of glaring illegality, it is both a constitutional and a moral duty. So the article goes on from there, and that'll be in the show notes. But the problem we have right now, Vicky, is regardless of the outcome, either side that doesn't prevail at this point in time, the perception will be among the people is that the election was stolen. Isn't that interesting, this paradigm that we're in?
Yeah, well, it's kind of just like our turn. The last time it was the Democrats, their turn to have the election. I mean, it's the same scenario. Another joke. No, because it's exactly the same theme on the script, except that it's our turn this time.
Yeah, and I don't like the joke because this joke isn't funny. Trey-trainor, the chairman of the Federal Election Commission, appeared on Newsmax this Thursday, and he confirmed his belief of the fraud.
I do believe that there's voter fraud taking place in these places. Otherwise, they would allow the observers to go in. When you have claims of 10,000 people who don't live in the state of Nevada having voted in Nevada, you have the video showing where people are, they're either duplicating a spoiled ballot right there, or they're in the process of just marking a ballot that came in blank. For a voter. That's a process that needs to be observed by election observers. State law allows those observers to be in there, and if they're not, then the law is not being followed, making this an illegitimate election.
Okay, now you sent me some information from Steve Bannon's War Room Pandemic, where phil-kline went on there to discuss the election, and they talked about the role of Mark Zuckerberg in the privatization of elections. That was very interesting. I have a little clip from that.
Talk about Zuckerberg. What is Zuckerberg doing, and how? Tell them how people are putting the thumb on the scale in this. I don't know. I guess it's a coup against President Trump, but trying to stop President Trump from closing on the victory he got on November 3rd.
Well, there's two things, as you know, Steve. If you want to control a country, you control the flow of information.
check, and you control the way that a nation picks its leaders. And what Zuckerberg has done, in March of this year, the federal government appropriated $400 million to states to manage elections in COVID. Zuckerberg matched it. And he moved that money through a nonprofit that has picked out Democrat strongholds to pour monies in to change the way that we're running elections. Those Zuckerberg monies, and we've demonstrated this through court-ordered produced documents we obtained in federal court in Pennsylvania. Those documents tell Philadelphia, for example, how to run their election, how many voting poll places they will have, where the Zuckerberg boxes, I call them Zucker boxes, the drop boxes are placed, and he's actually paying the election judges and the people working and counting the ballots. At the same time the Democrats are pushing Republicans out, they've invited a billionaire in the counting room. And that's happened in several states. This is deeply concerning. It's the privatization of our elections. If we allow it to continue, there may be a day where you go in to vote on the machine, you punch the button, and up pops the gecko who says, elections brought to you by Geico. We cannot allow the private sector to run our elections. Zuckerberg money is all through this election.
Particularly,
that is deeply concerning.
No, it's huge, particularly since it is the large corporations that are the most woke. Right, they're the ones that are coming after working class and middle class Americans the hardest. They're the ones in business with the Chinese Communist Party. They're the ones that are woke. It's all this woke capital.
Okay, so I don't know if you had any comments about that. That was your clip.
Well, what's amazing to me is that with all the things that have been reported on about the elections, is the number of things that are blatantly, obviously, against the law.
Mm-hmm.
Now, why aren't they arresting the people who broke the law? And if people broke the law, then there should be an automatic audit, or perhaps just an automatic decision for a do-over, depending.
Yeah.
But none of that happens. It's all being done in the civil process, civil lawsuits. Why aren't they applying the criminal laws? That's my question.
Maybe that's an indicator as to how deep the corruption goes. We do have a caller on the line. And, folks, we got a few minutes left if you want to weigh in. 610-600-1776. That's 610-600-1776. Or if you don't have free long distance, you can call toll-free 844-6-GOVERN, 844-646-8376. Let's go to Texas and take the call. Hello, caller. You're on the air.
Yeah, this fits right in with what you all are talking about. If later on this afternoon on CNN or Fox or MSNBC, if they come on and say, breaking news, the state of Pennsylvania's election commissioner president is announced that they're finished with the ballots. All 107% of the votes have been counted.
Yeah. More like 200%.
That would be just
Is there something
just
wrong?
about right,
I don't hear anything wrong there.
Yeah. Well, there's, it's probably more like 200%.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some truth for you. I'll let you guys go.
All right. Hey, thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Yep, bye-bye. There he is, Mark in Texas, weighing in. And, oops, I got to hit the right button here. All right.
Yeah, but it's almost as if applying the law, enforcing the law shows a bias.
Well,
if you arrest somebody who's done something criminal and they happen to be a Democrat, well, you're just showing bias.
Or you're racist. Maybe you're racist.
Yeah, racist.
Yeah, it's just insane. I mean, the thing is that I would love to beat up on the Republican Party because there are plenty of things in the Republican Party to beat up on. But the blatant mask off, in-your-face criminality that's going on in the Democratic Party right now is the pressing issue. And I'm sure that's going to be the case if Biden prevails in the next 4 years. It's
no doubt.
horrifying.
No doubt.
Horrifying to think all of the Obama-era stuff coming back, all the State Department stuff coming back, the foreign policy nightmares that we've had during the Obama years all being revisited upon us.
The massive importation of, quote, refugees.
And migrants. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's all implementing the UN agenda, the UN takeover of our country, the diluting our population with foreigners from all over the world. So basically killing anything that is American.
Yeah, you sent the audio also over of allum-bokhari. He spoke at Hillsdale College on the subject of big tech. And this is very important.
What is big tech? Big tech, as it exists today, means control. It is the antithesis of the original ideal of the World Wide Web, which was liberation, the liberation of information, the liberation of expression. The ideal behind the World Wide Web, when it was created in the 1990s, was that everyone could have a voice. All you had to do to access the global marketplace of ideas was to go online and set up a website. And that website belonged to you. No one could kick you off because they didn't like what you said. That was also by design, because the web, when it was invented, was competing with other types of online services that were not so free and open. It's important to remember that the World Wide Web, as we know it today, a network of websites accessed through browsers, was not the first online service ever created. In the 1990s, Tim Berners-Lee invented the technology that underpins websites and web browsers, creating the web as we know it today. But there were other online services, some of which predated Berners-Lee's invention. Corporations like CompuServe and Prodigy ran their own online networks in the 1990s that were separate from the World Wide Web and had access points that were different to web browsers. Unlike the decentralized World Wide Web with its network of independent websites, CompuServe and Prodigy were privately owned networks. They were open to the public, but every bit of information on those networks was owned by them, and they could, of course, kick you off for any reason. The web was supposed to be different. On the web, you had almost total freedom to set up a website or a web server, which then belonged to you. Unlike CompuServe and Prodigy, there was no owner of the World Wide Web who could kick you off. That was the idea, anyway. As we know, this is not the case today. The web today is very controlled, and the people who control it can kick you off. Despite the noble ideas that animated the early spirit of the web, it was, as we now know, captured by a handful of corporations. We all know their names: Google, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Amazon. Just like those old companies, they own everything you put on their platforms. It's their decision to give you a voice or not. The web, which was meant to liberate information, got us right back where we started. Unaccountable control over online information in the hands of a few powerful corporations. If we want a way out of this mess, we'll have to find a way to make the web better represent the ideals of its founding. But we can't just think about it in abstract and historical terms. Very few people used online services in the 1990s, whether it was Tim Berners-Lee's World Wide Web or CompuServe. But everyone uses them today. You can't not use them. Businesses depend on them. News publishers depend on them. Politicians and political activists depend on them. Today, big tech doesn't just mean control over online information. It means control over politics. It means control over news. It means control over commerce. And how are they using that control? Well, if you've been following the events of the past 2 weeks, which I assume you all have, what the big tech companies have been doing to Breitbart News, to the New York Post, and to President Trump, the leader of the free world, it's quite obvious what big tech's priorities are. And that brings me to my second definition of big tech as it exists today. Big tech is an election-stealing machine, more powerful than any other in American history. Now, that may sound alarmist, but having investigated the tech giants for over 4 years as senior tech reporter at Breitbart News, having researched and published a book on the subject, and having spoken to sources and whistleblowers from Facebook, Google, and Twitter, I don't consider it an exaggeration to say that if the technologies of Silicon Valley are allowed to develop to their fullest extent, without any oversight, without any checks and balances, that we will never have a free and fair election ever again. If you think that's an exaggeration, let me tell you what one of my Facebook sources told me in an interview for the book. This is his quote. "The plan for polarization is to get people to move closer to the center. We have thousands of people on the platform who have gone from far right to center in the past year. So we can build a model from those people and try to make everyone else on the right follow the same path."
Well, I don't know how they're accomplishing that, or if they're accomplishing that. It seems to me like people aren't moving to the center, but they're becoming more and more divided all the time.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what direction they move. The idea is the herding.
Yes, and manipulation.
Yeah, and what he said about elections, it's not just elections. It's human society as a whole. That is the objective, is management of humans, management of everything. And that's been, I saw it years ago when I started researching, and that's why I turned into such a maniac, totally obsessed with researching, because I saw it and what they were going to do to human society, and it really will be the post-human world.
Yep, that's exactly right. On the subject of big tech, before we run out of time, I wanted to point out real quickly, given the censorship, especially on YouTube and platforms like that, people need to be able to save. If you have a video that you see on YouTube that is important for the information it contains, you want to download that as quickly as possible before YouTube takes it down or otherwise makes it unavailable. Because sometimes what they'll do is they'll make it where it's private, and then you can't find it unless you have the address, the URL. There's a number of different ways that they censor things. But if you have the address of a video, it's real easy. And in fact, there's a player, and many people will be familiar with it. It's VLC Media Player. If you have VLC Media Player, you can download any video off of YouTube easily. And I'm going to tell you right now how to do it. You simply open up the VLC Media Player, and you go on the menu bar at the top, go to Media, and down to Open Network Stream. When you open Network Stream, there's a little box there that you can paste a URL in. You simply paste the address of the YouTube video in that box. Then now what you've done is you've opened the video in the player. Okay? So then, at that point, you go back on the menu bar, you go to Tools, and go down to Codec Information. Now, the box that pops up then from Codec Information, you'll notice down at the bottom of that box there is something called Location, and it has another box. That box will be populated with the real address of the video. Okay? Because what YouTube does is they embed the real video address inside a page. So you can't download it. But if you open it up in the media player and then go to Codec Information, this box that pops up has down at the bottom in that location box, it has the real address. Simply click on that and do a Control-A on your keyboard to highlight the whole thing, and then Control-C to copy it to your clipboard. Then you paste that address in your browser. Now you have something that you can right-click on and save file as, and you just simply save it to your computer like you would any other file. So,
wow, Darren, I am so impressed.
Yeah, that is a very useful thing, and I want people to be able to save things because you don't know if it's going to go away. Now, in the waning moments of the broadcast, I got one more clip I want to get to, Vicky. This is very important. This goes back to a number of years. This is Maxine Waters on a talk show, somewhere around February 2013. And she's talking about then President Obama having a database, putting a database in place, basically to control future Democrats It's a database on everybody.
The Los Angeles Police Department prepares for a drastic...
I totally blew it. That was the wrong clip. Here's the clip.
Made clear to our viewers and listeners is that, look, the inauguration represented the beginning of his second term.
Yes.
But it also represented the countdown of the end of his presidency.
That's right.
And the reality is, like anything else, you better get what you can while he's there because, look, come 2016, that's it.
Well, I don't know, and I think some people are missing something here. The president has put in place an organization that contains the kind of database that no one has ever seen before in life. That's going to be very, very powerful, and whoever... In
terms of the Organizing for America that he's now shifting to become a 501c4.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And that database will have information about everything on every individual in ways that it's never been done before, and whoever runs for president on the Democratic ticket have to deal with that. They're going to have to go down with that database and the concerns of those people because they can't get around it. And he's been very smart. I mean, it's very powerful what he's leaving in place, and I think that's what any Democratic candidate is going to have to deal with.
So what do you think of that?
I think that's just an amazing revelation. I'd like to see her questioned under oath about that.
Total control, ladies and gentlemen. Total control, even of their own. And there you go. We got to go, Vicky. Fastest 3 hours in talk radio. It just flies by. Folks, we might do another show later on in the week, so text govern to 80123 if you want to be notified. And we'll let you know when we go live. In the meantime, pray for this republic. Do what you can to restore it. God bless each and every one of you. We're living in interesting times. There's no question about that. So try to keep your chin up and keep your sense of humor. And just love your friends and family. Important to be close. All right, well, we've got to get out of here. Blessings to you. Thanks, Vicky. We'll talk to you later.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.